Hey, this is Shane. In today's coaching video, I want to answer a question that I get all the time, and that is, in regards to the subject of sugar, is all sugar bad for you? Now, the short answer to this is absolutely not. But it's essential that you understand what sugars are good, what sugars your body preferentially want to use, and what are the types of sugars that cause the problems we want to get out of our diet, okay? Now, I made some notes on a whiteboard so we go ahead and discuss this, and I want to start by just making sure you have a basic understanding of the different types of sugars, okay? We'll go through this real quick. We got monosaccharides, disaccharides, and polysaccharides. Now, we all, going back to the school, remember mono means one, disaccharide, or di is two, and poly is many. Now, with a strand of sugar, which is basically carbon and water, on a monosaccharide, we just have a single strand. Your body loves that. That's what it wants to use because it's the simplest form. Eventually, it has to get there anyways. You can only, your body can only use the simplest form, whether it's from a carbohydrate, it's got to use either glucose or fructose. It's got to get broken down to that. From a protein, it's got to get broken down into amino acids. It can only use amino acids. If it's fat, it's got to be fatty acids. So food has to get broken down. So your body obviously loves the simplest forms. It's going to free up energy. It's easier to digest. These come from primarily from your greens, glucose from your greens and your plants, vegetables, and fructose from your fruits. Your body loves these. These are the types of sugars that are good, and I'll explain this in more detail. As we extend this out, we get into like the polysaccharides, the multiple chains of sugar, which really that just means much sugar, right? We get into starches. We get into whether it's your grains and breads and cereals and whatnot. It's not that these are necessarily bad, but when we're talking about weight loss and insulin resistance, and when we have problems with sugar, these are the foods we want to get out of our diet. Why? Because they're taking so much more energy to break down. We're having to take it down to the simplest form. We're going to have issues within the digestive tract. We're going to get into creating when these chains get broken down, it creates something called carbonic acid. It just aids or adds to the acidosis effect, especially when we have a poor diet. So we want to basically be sticking with the simplest forms of sugars from fructose and glucose. Now, there's a couple different ways that sugar can get into your cells to be used as energy. First way is called active transport. I'm going to go ahead and just briefly explain that. When you would eat sugar, any food that would have a carbohydrate, right? It goes in your stomach, that enters the digestive tract. Now, it's got to get through the digestive tract walls, permeate through there, get into your bloodstream, and get to the cells, right? Well, insulin, which is released from your pancreas in response to elevated blood sugar levels, it acts as a carrier. It's a transport mechanism to carry that into the cells. Now, here's the thing. Over time, when you have a diet that is high in starches, it's high in processed and refined sugars, we develop what's called insulin resistance. And what this means is that as your body becomes flooded with sugar, you continue to send out more and more insulin. And over time, the cell receptors start to shut down. They say, no, we're not accepting this. We're not receiving this. So you continue just to shuttle all this sugar and insulin through your system, and that creates a host of problems. There's only so much sugar that you can store, which is primarily stored within your muscle cells and within your liver. And once those are full, you're going to convert that glucose. Once we've filled up the liver and muscle cells with glycogen, which is really just a stored form of glucose, you're going to start converting that into triglycerides, and that's where we had the problem with fat. Okay, we're storing fat. Okay, here's the thing: the other way that you can provide a cell, we're going to get down to the basic elements with energy with a simple sugar, is through a process called diffusion, and that's where fructose, fruit sugar, comes into play. Actually, it doesn't work under the same mechanism as glucose and other sugars. It's going into that cell membrane through a process of diffusion. It's immediate. It goes right in, so we can use it for instant energy. This is why fruits are so very beneficial, and we want to have those as staples in our diet. And there's some misconceptions and myths, especially with people who are may be insulin resistant or becoming type 2 diabetic, where you say, well, no, we can't have fruit. That's not true. Your body wants that, and not only is it a preferential fuel, but it's also going to help to aid in the alkaline effect within your body. It's going to heal the root of the problem, which is tissue degeneration from the pancreas and from the other glands. So fruit is a good sugar, okay? The problem we get into, and I'll just briefly explain this, is when we look at fruit sometimes getting a bad rap and where you want to watch your fruit, it's not fruit that itself within your diet is a problem. It's when we add fruit to a diet that is already high in excess starch and sugars. So I always use the example, we talk about like if you would go have a 6-inch sub at Subway, and we think, well, it's a turkey sub, it's 350 calories, whatever it is, we're doing good. We had that, and we had an apple or a piece of fruit after that. All right, normally this would be fine if you were able to use that sugar quite rapidly, but if you have low insulin sensitivity, if you have insulin resistance, if you're struggling with your weight, you just had probably 50, 60 grams of complex polysaccharides, of starch sugar from that bread, and now we're going to put excess fructose on top of that. You're just adding more sugar onto the sugar. So when you're following a primal glucose diet, which I'm always advocating, I'm saying eating, lots of greens and fruits and nuts and seeds and lean proteins, your body can use that sugar quite rapidly. It's easily accessible because it's a simple form of sugar, being a monosaccharide. It's going to go into the cells, you can use it for energy, and things work the way they're supposed to. The problem is when we have excess refined sugars, sucrose, table sugars, processed sugars, and all the artificial varieties of that, and a lot of these excess polysaccharides that create just an excess load of sugar within the body, okay? All right, so just to wrap this up, now we have, we talk about the different types of sugar. Just to recap, greens, those are going to be your primary sources of glucose. Fruit is going to basically be glucose and fructose. These are the two ones we want to focus on. That's what we want on our diet. The starch or polysaccharides. You want to be determine how much starch you should have in your diet based on your energy needs and your regulation of blood sugar. The higher your metabolism, the more your energy demands, the more you can include starches in your diet. But if you're struggling with weight loss, if you're overweight and you're trying to get a control on sugar and break sugar addictions from processed refined foods, you want to get these out of your diet, okay? Focus on the greens and the fruit. We talked about insulin resistance and how that develops, the acidosis and tissue degeneration. These are all causes of having too much processed refined sugar and too much starch within your diet, okay? All right, just the points to recap. Remember, only the simplest forms of sugar can be used by the body. That's why we prefer these monosaccharides. Excess glucose is stored. So once you don't have any more need for glucose, it's going to either be stored as glycogen. It's a stored form of it within a muscle cell. Once that's filled up, it's going to get converted into fat. The muscle cells in the liver, I should say. Easier digestion. Bottom line is when we're eating the monosaccharides, the fruits and the greens, it's easier to digest, easier to assimilate. It's instant energy. The better the digestion from the food you're eating, that's why I'm always advocating eat the simplest forms of food. You don't want to be having real heavy forms of protein and heavy forms of fat and heavy forms of carbohydrates. Eat the simplest forms. Better digestion equals better health, period, okay? And obviously the refined sugars and excess compound sugars are the real problem, and that's what you want to be getting out of your diet. So there it is. I hope that helps to explain a little bit. Focus on your greens and your fruits. We don't want to be pulling those out. That is the essential for all your antioxidants and your phytonutrients, and it's going to help to regenerate the tissue within the pancreas and all the other glands that have become degraded over a period of time from following a poor diet. So stick with that and you'll be in good shape. Pull out all the other processed refined sugars and all the starches and you'll be good to go. All right, if you have any questions, always feel free to shoot me an email and we'll talk soon. Thanks a lot.